Hi, everybody. How are you? Welcome to today's episode of the Procure Smarter podcast. Today, we are talking to Professor Mark Wolters, and he is an expert on all things marketing, YouTube, branding. So I'm very excited to talk to him. A little bit of business. We are sponsored by ProcureSmart, which is my FF&E purchasing agency specializing in all things hospitality, new construction, renovation, conversion. If you have a 2022, 2023 project coming up, we would love to work with you. All right, everybody, stay tuned. All right, everybody, as promised, we have Professor Mark Wolters with us. This is a little bit of a long introduction, but I want to get it all in because you have a lot going on. You are an award-winning business educator and vlogger with over 185 million views. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
On your social media platform. You have taught around the world. However, you're best known for your YouTube channel, which is how I found you, was through your YouTube, focusing on cultural education and business education. And you are currently teaching associate professor of business administration and the academic director of marketing at the Geis College of Business at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, right?
Yes, there's a lot there. Yes.
There's a lot
As all of
there.
us, we all have multiple hats.
All right. Okay. So I found you on your YouTube channel. I started watching them. I got hooked. I loved it. I even went back to some of the very older ones and to see what you were doing. I will say I'm a fan of the newer ones. I think the newer ones are a lot of fun.
I'm glad. I'm glad I've improved over the years.
Yeah. Okay. So I've given you your kind of build up. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and let's talk about marketing.
So, in my career, I've been a marketing professor for about the last 10 years at the University of Illinois and been teaching business for the last 20 years around the world. And one thing I've seen with marketing just in general is that social media and the internet has made it so all of us can get our own personal brand out there, whether it's our podcast, whether it's our YouTube channel, whether it's your own TikTok. I mean, there's so many ways to reach people and market to people that it's just been an explosion. And that's what makes teaching it so much fun, because every year there's something new, like 3 years. I mean, TikTok was there 3 years ago, but it wasn't there. Now
Right.
it's all over the place, right? And if you think back to the good old days of MySpace was there, now it's not there anymore. So it's been a fun ride the last decade or so. And YouTube's been my big platform I've worked on. But I know, like all of us, all marketers, there's no silver bullet. You got to make sure you're using all the opportunities you have to market your product, market your brand, market your firm. So
So let me ask you, I'm a fairly new company. I've been in business since 2014, but I've really only committed going full time this past year. And like you said, there's a million ways to market yourself. If you're new, and with the pandemic, so many people were downsized, their departments
yeah.
were let go, and they're doing their own thing. Where do you start? Like, if you had a roadmap, is there such a thing as a roadmap for marketing these days?
Well, I think for one thing, if people are looking to their personal brand, if they want to make it on Instagram or YouTube or anything social media wise, it's just like any business. You don't have overnight successes. I mean, yes, there are the exception to the rule, and that's what people focus on. And they're like, oh, I'll put out a video and it'll get 1 million views, and the people will come to my channel, they'll buy my class. And I'm like, no, it takes you time to get through all those things. And I talk to, I mean, dozens of YouTubers every week, like the wannabe YouTubers, like, hey, I want to get them. Like, all right, first thing you got to go. This is a long-term thing. I mean, you're not going to get huge overnight. It could happen. Even if you have a video that goes viral and gets hundreds of thousands of views or millions of views, that's one video. And that's viral for what, a week? Then it's
Right.
gone. You got to have enough content. So I always talk to them and say, look, you got to plan for the long game here in terms of the content you're going to have, the niche you're going to go for. Because if you're the person that's all about the 2022 Olympics, well, what happens in 2023? And so
Yeah.
that's one of those things you have to have more of a strategic thought process. And I know a lot right now, people are very much like, right now kind of stuff. But for marketing, you got to think, what's my impact going to be, what I do now versus in the future. So what I tell them is like, look, try and see what works. figure out what you like to do, so it's a little bit easier to do, and really focus on that, and be open. Because I know when I started making travel videos, we were doing, language, we were doing top 10 sites, we were trying all kinds of different stuff to see what worked. And then we saw that these 5 things you'll love and hate about travel, that really got people there. And it was the honest aspect of it, the really, look, I want to know the good and the bad, just get me ready for it. Then I'm like, okay, like it'll tell you. And your analytics, there's a reason why you see all those ads for analytic courses and analytic degrees and analytic certificates, because it will really tell you what people really like. And so we went and started making more content that was more not a top 10 list or a word list, but hey, our audience told us what they wanted. They wanted truth. They wanted to know the do's, the don'ts, not some list. And so we went that way. And so that's one thing I would say is like, realize it's going to take time, but look at the numbers. Your audience will tell you what you want or what they want.
So let me ask you, have you always been an educator? Did you start your career out as an educator?
So I started working at Covey Securities. I was assistant to a stockbroker, and I was going that path because basically it was like, because I was finishing my master's degree, and he's like, hey, look, I want you to hire you as my partner, and we're gonna work through together on this. But after about 6 months of sitting behind that desk, and I mean, I love to travel, and I saw my boss, and anytime he was gone for like an afternoon, people were like, where are you? I want to make trades. I'm like, oh man, you never really can go anywhere. And I realized it wasn't really for me. And so I ended up going back, and I ended up getting an opportunity to teach in Lithuania because I always kind of want to teach. And
In
so
Lithuania.
in Lithuania. So I ended up going to
Okay.
teach in Lithuania, started doing consulting, branding and marketing consulting while I was there. So I got to do both. And then that over time, I realized I love both of them. So how could I do both? And then eventually I ended up in Brazil. I did a PhD in Portugal, and continue doing a little bit of everything the whole time.
So okay, so now you are in Portugal. You've got your PhD.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know how tough that process is. And you have a love for travel. So at what point do you go, I want to take this and do something with it?
So I started making the videos. I started making the videos actually when I was living in Portugal to help my wife, because she was my fiance at the time, and she was moving to Portugal for us to be together. So I was like, well, I got to teach her some Portuguese, right? And so I started to make these like, here are the food words, and then I went, here's the grocery store by where we're going to live. So she kind of got to learn the neighborhood and learn some of the stuff when we were there. And then I started making videos for my students I was teaching, because not everybody was a native speaker in English, so I wanted to make sure they learn the material. So I started making business videos as well for the main topics so they could study for their exams. And it was kind of like a side thing, like just for fun. It was like a hobby. Like some people ride bikes or some people exercise. I started making YouTube videos, and it kind of grew from there. And over the years, some people think like their hobby has to be something that's completely separate. I'm like, no, my hobby is education. Like, I mean, I'm an educator myself. I love being a professor, but I also love helping people that aren't in my class with those videos. So it was kind of a nice thing that I got to keep kind of putting them together. And then, over the years, obviously, you've been able to monetize and make money at it, so it pays for itself, and you can do these things. And that's what's been nice. And that's another thing I think telling people is like, you're not gonna pay all your bills on YouTube if you got a family, your first year or so. Like you can go all in, but you got to make sure there's something there to help you out. And I think that's one of the things we have to realize. I mean, it's easy if I was 22 years old and just getting out of school, I mean, maybe you have college debt, obviously, but like, I don't have a family, I don't have a mortgage. It's a lot different when you're a little bit grayer in the beard, let's say, and you've got 2 kids, a mortgage, you got to think about the kids going to college. It's a whole different ball game. And so kind of put all these things together. How can we go that way? So I can kind of bring the family along with us. So that the kids have done videos and they travel with us and they do stuff. And they, our youngest one actually has his own channel now. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's just, I mean, I can tell it's just all over the place
Yeah.
sometimes.
Okay, well, let's talk about what the pandemic then did, because
Yes.
it affected you on two corners, like the travel, obviously, we're all locked down. I think it's getting better. And then the education piece, everybody left the classroom and went home. So, and talk to me about how it affected you in the classroom, and then how it affected your family in the travel.
So one of the things is, since I've been making those business videos since like the, I don't know, late 2000s, So I've been making the business videos for 15 years or something like that. I had kind of known eventually I wanted to teach online classes, and I'm like, and I'm very much not a my head's in this corner and then the PowerPoints here. That is a horrible way to teach online. Like that, just students don't get it. So I started filming my classes multiple years before, little by little, like, oh, we're here in Rwanda, and here's an example. We're going to talk about international marketing. And then, oh, we're here in, I was in, where was I? I was in Indianapolis, and there's like a river going through. I'm like, okay, let's talk about supply chain because the river's going through. And so I was making these videos as it went. So I was better prepared than a lot of the professors that had to switch over. Also, because we do lives, we do all this stuff. It was more of a natural kind of thing. But when it happened, I felt horrible for the students. I felt horrible for the faculty because the faculty didn't know what they were doing. I mean, that summer of 2020, I was going to other faculty's homes, and we would sit out on the balcony or talk in the driveway, and I would walk them through how to teach a class online, like just to film themselves, and I mean, just the basic stuff. And some of them were paralyzed with fear. And I felt so bad. And I knew those students, they're still paying that full tuition. Like they're going to expect a real deal. And some professors shine, and some teachers shine, and some didn't. But also on the other side, I knew, like, now that we're 2 years into this, where I really see the pain is in the students, like in terms of suicides and depression. I mean, I have such sympathy for my students now because they spent 2 years of their really formative years. Think about your first couple years in college, that changes you. Now you've been stuck at home watching TV or watching your computer with no friends, or very few friends. I mean, it's just horrible. And I've seen that as we come back in person. The students just, I mean, the first couple of weeks we had actual face-to-face classes again. Last fall, it was like the students had PTSD. I mean, they wouldn't talk to each other. Like, no one would. I mean, I have a class with like 300 students in there. Nobody would answer a question. Nobody even try. It was just really impactful, and that's why I was really happy to see a lot of people like work together. Like I made all my marketing videos. I had them all on YouTube, and I was telling other marketing professors, if you have a topic you need to cover and you can't do it, just take my videos and use them. Don't even worry about it. Just send them to your students. So I've had students from the MBA program at Rice. They're like, oh, hey, professor, they're using your videos here. And I have people from all over the world. Oh, my professor used your videos in class. I'm like, that's great. And there's so many opportunities that are out there. And so it's been really emotionally tough for my students and to see them there, but it's good to see people are working to get it better. But for me, I mean, in class, in-person education, for me, works way better because I get to see the students and understand them versus the 90 little black boxes where they don't turn on their camera.
Right.
So there was that side. Now the travel side, I mean, it was funny because January of 2020 was our second best month we ever had on Wolters World. I'm like, I think we're finally going to hit it big. I think we're going to make it. I think it's going to be an awesome year. And it just took off. And then, I mean, literally it goes like a cliff. Yeah, I mean, just a complete cliff off the thing. And of course, no one was advertising, so all the money disappeared. I mean, we don't do really too many sponsorships and everything because we're very strict about how we do things. But like the ad revenue disappeared, the viewership disappeared. And so what we did is we pivoted because there was no point in talking about travel because no one was traveling. So we switched to using live. And so we started doing Whiskey Wednesday. So Wednesday evenings we'd talk, and then Saturday mornings we get on it. And we build a really good community around this kind of, shared experience we're all going through. And so in that way, it was good that I really got to know our fans and understand them better. But viewership didn't come back again until May and June of 2020. And actually May and June of 2020 were better than May of June of 2019. So it's like great. But of course then Delta hit and it crashed again. And then things started getting going again. I was like in November, I'm like, hey, things are looking good. And then
Omicron
hit and then crashed down again. So now, it's one of those things. I'm like, okay, what videos I'm going to put out the next month or so? I'm just doing basically all US stuff for the next, month or so, because right now, no one's really considering traveling abroad. They're more considering, local. So I'm like, all right. So today was like the don'ts of San Antonio. We've got the don'ts of the don'ts of Amtrak travel in the US is coming out soon too. So, some more fun things.
I love it. So I just want to touch briefly back on what this pandemic has done to students in general. Now, all of my children are grown and out of school. But as somebody who is a lifelong learner, and has, gotten my own doctorate, um, it is very isolating what this pandemic has done to our students.
Yeah.
And I know in our county, there's a debate to this day. As of last night, they were still debating in class, out of class, in class. Now, we had a big snowstorm that hit this week. So I understand the safety precaution, but I think we will find that this pandemic has taken a real hit to our children this generation.
I agree. I can see it in terms of, just the social aspect of the social integration, being with people more tied to the computers. I mean, I literally, it breaks my heart seeing the kids. I mean, I know for safety wise, I understand. I completely understand where it is.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm like, I want my students back in the classroom, whether young or old, because that's part of life. That's how we grow. That's how we emotionally mature. That's how we socially mature. And if we don't have that, you're going to have people that don't have the social maturity to interact. And so that's what's tough. And I do understand. I mean, schools don't have teachers right now. You got people that are sick, and that's really tough. But we got to find a way to kind of help that. If it is, like I know last year some schools were like, your Tuesday, Thursday, their Wednesday, Friday, Monday is this. I'm cool with that. But I don't want to see people just locked in their rooms with a computer just because the emotional damage. And I'll be honest with you, I've had more students with emotional distress in the last 6 months, heck, than I've had in 20 years of teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
given out the suicide hotlines, and I've given out the support hotlines more than I ever thought I would, and it just breaks your heart. And I'm like, we got to be doing more for our students. We got to be doing more for these kids.
So let's turn it back a little bit to the marketing piece, because one of the things that you do so well is personal branding. And
I
we
think
have a whole generation of college kids that are going to come out that have spent the last 2 years at home in their bedrooms on the computer, who didn't do internships, who weren't doing face to face and all that stuff that you learn, conflict resolution and
Mhm.
relationship management. So, how do you think that's going to impact this new set of kids coming out of college that maybe don't have the same skill set?
I think it's going to be a very rude wake up call for them when they get to the workforce, because the people that are already graduated and the people that are younger, they have the emotional, they have the interpersonal skills, and you're going to have this 2 or 3 year window of people that are really going to get hit hard. And that's why I'm saying, like, we need help. Like, we need to be the emotional support and help them through that. And so that's why HR departments are going to have a lot more work over the next 5 to 6 years of helping people integrate better and working better in teams, because they haven't worked in teams. And even though we've worked online on teams, it's
Yeah,
not.
it's not the same.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing. That's one thing I see going forward.
Yeah, I do too. Maybe somebody like yourself will be an advocate for these students out there, and help HR departments say, listen, uh, they're not lacking. They just didn't learn the skill.
Yeah.
They're still
And
a
what
great
was
candidate.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I saw is this first semester we were back in the fall. Like I said, the first 2 or 3 weeks, it was like PTSD. I mean, it was really a thing. But by the end of the semester, they were back to being the usual students of like, yeah, professor, I was sick. That's why I wasn't there. Like, they were getting back into it. So it's not like this is a forever thing. Like, they can get back,
Yeah.
but it is that missing that, because think about the shared experience of going to prom, going to homecoming, graduation, you know, leaving home for the first time when you're 18 versus when you're 20. I mean, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well,
yeah,
let's talk about again, personal branding.
right.
You talk about the importance of being true to your own brand.
Yes.
So, what does that mean to you?
Well, for me, being true to your own brand is being who you are, because anybody that has to lie for a living eventually gets caught in the lie. And if you're trying to pretend that you're somebody you're not, it makes life so difficult, because you always have to be on, you always have to be in that lie. And over time it wears you down. So if you're who you are, you be true to yourself, then it's so easy. Like I tell my students, like, look, I'm a happy-go-lucky person. I want people to succeed and I want to help people. It's not a line, it's who I am, and therefore I can do that. That's not for everybody. And so I don't say do that. It's just like I tell people, not everyone needs to be a marketer. Everyone do your own thing. You might use marketing, but you have to be a marketer. And so that's why I kind of say is like, look, find who you are and be true to that. Because if not, you'll see like, athletes, they'll be out there, and when they try to be something they're not. Look, you're a quarterback trying to play a wide receiver. You're not going to be happy. Play your position that you're really good at, and you'll go farther. And just for the emotional and the mental side of things, is not having to play the lie. Just being true to yourself. It's a lot easier because then you're not trying to make it up as you go.
Well, and don't you think that in today's world of Instagram and Twitter and I mean just all of it, it's so easy to put on a persona.
Yeah.
Everything's perfect. My home is beautiful. Everything is just wonderful. And then you peel
This
back the
looks nice, doesn't it? I'm not sure for the rest of my office because it's
You
just
can see that I'm not showing you mine. Yeah,
yeah.
it's really hard to get to the bottom of who you really are these days.
No, it is. And the thing is, they talk about the imposter syndromes and they talk about these things. And it's true, people start to doubt themselves. Well, you shouldn't doubt yourself, like be confident in yourself. But I see it as a travel vlogger. I see the Instagrammers, I see this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, they're like, it's just me on the Great Wall of China. I'm like, that never happens. You are a liar, and like, I'm okay. You can get it like maybe a view one time, but it's just one of those things where they sell that false, the floppy hat dress going back. You're by yourself in Bali, and I'm like, no, no, no. You're selling a false thing because eventually people that want that lifestyle, they try to do like you, and they see that that's not really what it is, and then they turn on you like, you liar. That's why when you see people that become travel vloggers and bloggers and stuff, and they look back and they're like, yeah, that's not real. That's not real. And eventually that stuff all catches up to you.
It does. It does. All right. So a couple of so one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is you had a conversation about how do your customers see you?
Yes.
And it was one of my favorite videos. I thought it was so interesting. I actually watched it a couple times. I kind of stalked it a little bit. But you had three questions that you talked about. Can you talk about that, or would you like me to prompt you on what those three questions were?
Prompt me with those three questions, and
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
go
You
through it.
said one, put yourself, Google yourself.
Yes, that is one of the biggest things people don't realize is people Facebook, we used to call it Facebook stalk you when Facebook was popular, but people will stalk you online. Like if you're going for a job, they're going to look you up, and what comes up? Like when people look me up, my son will be like, there's a doctor in Minnesota that's Mark Wolters. I'm like, well, I guess that's okay. But it's like I want to make sure the right things show up. So it shows like Professor Walters, it shows my university account, it shows my website. Like I want that coming up. I don't want, like a couple of years ago, for some reason, one of the videos that came up had very few views, but it was actually not bad a video. It was an interview that one of my students did of me for one of their journalism classes. And that was popping up. And I'm like, why is that one coming up? So I had to think, but it was good. They're like, Mark Walters, the best professor ever. I'm like, well, that's nice. Thank you. But you want to see what's up there because that's what they're going to be talking about. Just like when people go into a store, they already know what they're going to buy. They've done their research beforehand. So you're not selling them things they haven't already decided to buy. So you need to make sure you're selling yourself well online so people will see what's out there.
Yeah. And you said the second thing was how are you represented in those searches? Is it good
Yes.
or is it bad? What's the tone of your search?
Because here's the thing is I'm lucky because I have a lot of positive stuff that's out there, like awards and things. But sometimes it comes like for college students, is it your high school graduation? Does a picture you were on there show up, or is it your Instagram where you're shotgunning a beer? I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I have shotgunned some beers in my day, but is that what I want people to see? And that's why I talk about make sure the right stuff's showing up. And if you think that people are not going to find your private settings, they will. It doesn't
Yeah.
take long for them to get through all that stuff. So make sure you know what's out there. And if you like, there's certain things you can do. Like you make sure your settings are no one can tag you, or if they tag you, only you can see it. There's those things you can do. But yeah, I mean, see how you're represented out there.
And do you think, I'm going to come to the third one, but I want to ask you this first. Do you think that there should be a class, and you would know more than I am, maybe there is a class about teaching our college students who are coming out how to manage their social media accounts for a professional life? Because they're just tagging themselves away. They're just all over Facebook, Instagram. And then they get into an office setting and somebody Googles them. And like you said, let me share you what I obviously will not give names, but we hired a young lady one time, and I didn't do it because I don't care that much about it. But somebody in the office Googled her, as they do, and she had a Facebook post pop up where she was in a men's button down with nothing else on.
Gotcha.
And it was a public image. And I was in a position of, do I say something as a woman, as a leader, as a supervisor? Do I say something, or is that her business? What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a very different generation now than when we came up. Whereas, when we came up a few years ago,
Yeah.
that would have been one of the things, you'd be like, hey, you might want to untag yourself or make that private. Now people almost wear it like a badge of honor. It's like, yeah, I had this, I did those things. And it's not as taboo. It's kind of like, 20 years ago, tattoos were taboo. Now it's like, you don't have a tattoo. I don't
Yeah.
have a tattoo. And people are like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you have one? So it is very much a different kind of vibe. Especially, when you see the TikTok trends and the Instagram trends where, oh, you're supposed to do this, whether it's a dance, whether it's something like that, and I look at it as like, it comes down to how you feel. Like I'll be honest, when I first started working, where I'm at now, people used to make fun of me all the time. Wolters World, ha ha ha. And they make fun of me. And I'm like, I'm proud of what I did. I'm proud of the videos and the people I helped. I mean, we were on ABC Nightly News with Diane Sawyer a couple times, and we were, number of TV channels. And I remember going, were you on ABC Nightly News? Were you on Secret Radical? Were you on the TV in Portugal? Were you on TV here? What have you done? And then they shut up.
Right.
Because I have no shame. It's like anything. When people tease you, they tease you because it bothers you. If it doesn't bother you, like, hey, yeah, people are like, oh, you're my kids, they'll get grief sometimes. Your dad's a YouTuber. I'm like, yeah, your dad's a YouTuber and he's very successful and helps lots of people. What's the problem?
Yeah, he's paying the mortgage.
Exactly, it's paying the mortgage, and that's one thing that's what really where you see like the generational divide. Whereas now it's like, hey, that was my Instagram, that's my personal stuff, but now they're putting their personal out public.
Yeah.
So it is a tough one to say the least. I think that's on the lady. I mean, she wants it. That's her business. But I mean, I would be like, hey, like for my students, my TAs that I have work for me, I will look them up and see on there and be like, hey, you might want
to private that.
Especially where I used to see more, because my students don't do Facebook anymore. Where I would see it the most, it wasn't. I mean, one, your profile pictures are always public, but also the background that what the social media person, I can't remember the name of it, not the profile picture, but the background picture. That was too. And that one actually, people sometimes be more risque on that than they would be on their profile picture. Like, that's always public. So you might want to go and delete those. So you only have the one thing there. And so that's one thing, because that's when people start clicking back. You get back 10 what was your 10 Facebook profile pictures ago? I mean, it could have been me having a beer. I mean, you just want to kind of think about that. So
okay. And then your third one that you mentioned is your message consistent?
Yes. And this is one of the things is I am always talking about honest travel, but I also talk about honest teaching. I talk about honest stuff. So I tell my students, I'm not going to lie to you. I will tell you like it is. Even if it hurts your feelings or hurts me, I'm going to tell you, because otherwise, why am I doing this? And so that consistency needs to be not just with who you are, but think about on your website or your blog or whatever. That's one thing, is the consistency in a brand. Companies sometimes confuse people because Twitter will be one thing, their website will be something else, and they use a totally different color scheme on Instagram. And we're like, do I have the right company here? It confuses them. Being consistent with your brand, because remember, a brand is just a promise. It's a promise that gets delivered again and again and again, and that's how we build trust. And so if you stay consistent with your brand across all platforms, in person, in events, then people know what to expect with you. Because the thing is, it's like, I've worked with people that I knew ripped me off, but I knew they would rip me off. So therefore I could plan accordingly and charge them more at the beginning to get like half up front, which will pay for the stuff, and they wouldn't pay at the end. But I'm like, okay, because I knew this was going to happen. That. But the people that are all over the place, like, are you going to be good this time, bad this time? That's what's tough.
Yeah. Tell me your favorite place you've traveled.
Favorite place I've traveled. So I had probably the most fun living in Brazil. And I usually tell people I love Brazil. I always tell people to go to Brazil. If you speak Portuguese, it's fantastic. If you don't speak Portuguese, it's a good visit. So that's what I always enjoy. Um, there's somewhere like Rwanda was probably the most surprising place that we loved. Like my oldest son and my wife like fight with each other who gets to go back to Rwanda first because we had such a great time there. And then there's always like, for me now, as you get older, you like you miss your friends. And as we get older, our friends move away. So like, I love that's one of the tough things the last couple of years. Since a lot of my friends live in Europe, I haven't been able to see them. So it's like this summer we're traveling again. We went to Ireland, we've done a few trips, but now we get a chance to go see him. So I'm like, okay, I'm seeing Aldi when I'm in Portugal. I'm seeing Fernando when I'm in Italy. I see another German friend of mine. He's on a business trip to Miami. And next time, so I'm like, okay, I get to see them, and that's actually what drives me to go. So for me now, like I love going to Vicenza, Italy. I wouldn't put it in the top 10 places to go to in Italy, but since I have a lot of friends that are there, I have a good experience that goes with it. That's one of the things I really enjoy.
That's awesome. Professor Walters, thank you so much for sharing all of this information with me. Tell people how they can reach you.
So if you'd like to learn more, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube at Wolters World, Wolters World. Or if you want to learn our business videos, just look up Professor Walters on YouTube or on just professorwalters.com, and you'll have all kinds of videos to help you out. Social media, you want to learn how to do YouTube yourself. We have things like that. Also, more advanced marketing help just to help you learn on your own.
Nice. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop recording. And all right, everybody, that was Professor Mark Walters. Totally fascinating. Who knew that Rwanda is a vacation spot? That is amazing. Thank you very much for tuning in this week, and we will see you next week. If you are enjoying this podcast, please support the show by subscribing, leaving your comments, reaching out to us. And of course, as always, if you need any procurement help with your renovation, conversion, or new construction, we are here for you. Reach out to us. Be kind. Have a nice day, everybody.